Okay, well, let's get started. Amy, are we waiting for anyone else? All right, terrific. Well, really great to see you. It's I was not a big Zoomer before all of this happened, so I got to say it's kind of growing on me, but I hope it doesn't grow too long or too large. So let me just do another quick adjustment here. Okay. So tonight I'm going to cover 3 seafood dishes. We're going to start with a cold crab salad. We're going to move to a hot scallop mignon is what I call it. And that's a reference to, if you remember filet mignon a few decades ago, as I do, you'll remember them wrapped in bacon and seared, and we're going to do exactly the same thing to the scallops and serve that on a angel hair pasta griddle cake and with some fra diavolo sauce. It's a great dish. And then the third and final dish is going to be a rosemary smoked salmon with some apple braised lentils and what is called a cabbage chartreuse. And basically that is essentially a stuffed cabbage, but we make it into a ball, add garlic and onion and all kinds of great things inside. So hope you like it, and let's get started with the first dish. So first thing we're going to do is marinate the crab meat. Now the crab meat that we're using is a jumbo lump, and jumbo lump, you can buy it frozen, in season, you can buy it fresh. I know the Gulf Coast has some really great fresh jumbo lump when it is in season. One of the brands that is not typically a fresh, never frozen product is called Phillips, and for the frozen market, they really are pretty much the industry standard. That's what we have today. We have the jumbo lump crab meat right here. First thing I would say is that as you are opening the can, if it's fresh, it'll probably come in a plastic tub with a lid. If it comes in a can, in either case, be very careful when you are opening it and removing the crab meat. Throughout the whole process, you want to avoid crushing the lumps or shredding the lumps. Just makes for a much nicer eating experience. So to the crab meat, it's very simple. With great crab meat, you want to do very little to it. Just sort of accentuate it with a little bit of aromatics and a little bit of acid. So we're doing a tablespoon of shallots, doing a half teaspoon of Dijon. We have this very nice lemon-infused extra virgin olive oil. It's made by Acero. I'll put the notes on that particular product up and get it out on a blast. So that's lemon-infused extra virgin olive oil. A little lemon zest. Does everybody have one of these? If you don't, you need to get one. It's called a microplane. And basically, they took the concept of an old wood rasp and brought it into the kitchen. And kitchen's never been the same. These are really great for cheese, for zesting. Makes it so easy. Half teaspoon of salt. And then that just gets tossed very lightly. All right. Toss that first because ideally, what you want to do is get this marinating, get it in the fridge, and let it marinate for at least 30 minutes. An hour would be great, just to have that flavor permeate. We're a little pressed for time, of course, so we're going to move a little faster than that. Next thing I want to do is I have one of the garnish components is this chive oil, and it's kind of a neat technique, so I thought I would just run through that quickly for you. Sorry, I'm my own sous chef and dishwasher today, so I'll be popping in and out. So for this chive oil, it's very simple, but it makes a really beautiful product, as you'll see in just a second. So we're going to take, in this case, it's chives and parsley. It can be really any green leafy vegetable, but the parsley really is best for imparting the flavor. You can use scallions, any aromatic herbs will do. So you just want to take them, very rough chop. Throw them right in the blender. Some olive oil. You can use olive oil, you can use avocado oil. Avocado's really a good choice because it's a little more neutral and it's going to allow the flavor of the herbs to come out more pronounced. So that's all it is, just your choice of herbs and the oil, and blend it up. I know it's fascinating to watch that blender going round and round, but get it blended till it's super smooth, because what that's going to do is just release a lot more of the flavor and the color. And then there's only left to be done is put in a saucepan. Just going to stir it around just a little bit. And then if we fast forward, what we're going to do is we're going to heat this to 212 degrees. Just use a small instant read thermometer or something that has these fine points. And when you start to approach 200, get ready because it'll go really quick past 200. At 212, pull it off. We have my notes, sticky notes. We have a coffee filter in a sieve. Now remember, this came up to 212 degrees. We checked it with the thermometer and we're all good. The next step, into the coffee filter. Just work it back and forth through the coffee filter. You can get a little bit. You see that? As it cooks, as it comes up to temperature, it's going to look like it's curdling. That's fine. That's what you need it to do, because what it's doing is extracting the essential oils out of the herbs at that point. So the steps are: strain it into the bowl. And then take the bowl with the oil and set that in a bowl set on ice, cool it very quickly, because like most green vegetables and green herbs, if you're cooking them, if you shock them, it'll retain the color, it'll brighten the color. So we want to take that oil after it's strained through the coffee filter, shock it in ice water with the spatula, just stir it around the bottom of the bowl, and it'll chill off nice and quickly for you. The result is this really beautiful aromatic oil. Someone's messing with me. They unscrewed my lid. Can you see that? It's got a really delicate chai flavor, beautiful color. It's a really great addition to a lot of plates, a lot of salads, savory foods. All right, so that's the chive oil. You can check that off the list. Okay, and the next is the frisee salad. This salad we're just going to use to garnish the top of the crab meat, get a little additional texture there, some herbiness. All right. So what I have here is some green frisee. Frisee is also known as baby endive, but baby curly endive, not Belgian endive. It's a very delicate, very lacy lettuce and works very, very well for presentations. Into that, just some celery leaves. If you've ever wondered what to do with those pesky celery leaves when you're making celery sticks, save them. Wrap them in a damp towel. They'll last for 3 or 4 days and use them in salads. Add the celery. Then we have 4 sliced radishes. Two teaspoons of olive oil. I added some tarragon leaves. We have a little salt and pepper, just a pinch. Now, in this herb salad, you can all right, just cut the tomato in half. And then
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
cut it in half down the axis. Cut it straight down the axis. Then lay it on its flat side. And now you're going to essentially cut slices. There's the stem. We cut it down the axis, and now we're going to slice it across the equator, if you will. All right. That's going to give you the right size tomato slice. Now we're going to slice this just under 1/8 of an inch thick. Can you see how thin that is? Okay, if you get too thick, you may have problems depending on how ripe the tomato is. If it's not ripe enough, a thicker slice is going to sort of separate. You'll see what I mean when we start to put these rings together. So keep it thin. And what I do is I use the tip of my finger, and I will, wish I had a cameraman, get these close-ups going. But what I'll do is you'll see me put my finger where I want the blade of the knife to be. I'll make that slice. I'll move my finger back where I want the next slice to be. So my finger is the guide. All right, so you cut about 9, 10 slices. The first thing you're going to do is take all those slices, and they'll stick together pretty well, and just spread them out, shingle them out a little bit. So essentially you have a fence. Pretty easy so far. We're just going to bend that fence and drop it into the mold. And then just even the slices out. You'll push them up against the side of the mold. It'll thin out the stack just a little bit. Okay. So we have 360 degrees of tomato crown. Mission accomplished. So to do this in bulk, again, anywhere from 8 to 80 to 800, I would be assembling what you just saw on a tray that I could refrigerate. And I would get these all done, or I would ask one of my very valued colleagues to get many of them done. But we would have the rings pre-made, and then simple matter of taking that marinated crab meat, filling the ring, just packing it down just a little bit, because what that does is it compresses the tomatoes up against the side of the mold, and as it sits for just a second, it's going to help stabilize that mold. Now, next thing is we got to get it from the tray or the cutting board to the plate, hopefully without any mishaps. So, if you have a favorite spatula, and I have a favorite spatula, these guys, can you tell I like them? They come in lots of colors. They're great. They're perfect size. They're great for turning fish, pancakes, everything. We're Bed Bath & Beyond. I think they're like $6, if there are any left. All right, so we take the spatula, and as I'm going in the mold, I'm kind of very quickly just sawing it underneath so it doesn't disturb the tomatoes. I can pick up the whole thing, put it in the middle of your serving plate, pack it down just a little bit. Up comes the ring, and then that, you have me at tomatoes, but we're going to add some things to that. Next thing we're going to do is garnish it with the salad. It's smaller. Nice refreshing salad on top. Also in the recipe is this sriracha white truffle aioli. Very simple. I didn't demonstrate putting this together because it really is just putting everybody in the pool and mixing them up. So this is that sauce. And you can do stripes. You can do dots. Whatever your inspiration for the day is. We're going to do a few dots. And then we're going to finish it with the chive oil, just a few drops on top. and then some more around the plate. So that's the first dish. That's the crab salad imperial. Okay. All right. Let me clear the decks here just 1 second. Any questions or comments? Am I going too fast, too slow? You can hear me okay? I like that. Thanks.
Chef,
Yes.
I have a question. How long will that oil last? Refrigerate the oil?
The oil will last, it'll be most vibrant and flavorful for 5 to 7 days. It will last 3 weeks. The color will not degrade. You just won't get that fresh herbal flavor that you would if you enjoyed it in the first few days. And that's the reason for, if you're interested in the science behind it, the reason that we bring it up to 212 degrees is that we have to kill the enzymes that reside in the plant, that if those enzymes remain, they're going to change the color. They won't affect the flavor so much, but they'll affect the color. So we want to get it hot enough to kill the enzymes, but then that's why we put it in the ice bath, because then we want to drop it so we don't kill the color, right? So that's how those factors work together on it. Okay. Next are our scallops. First thing I want to get started is a quick Fra Diavolo sauce. Another thing I really like at home are these thin white cutting boards. I just put a damp paper towel on top of my real cutting board. And so if I'm doing a lot of prep, these are really inexpensive enough to have 3, 4, 5, depending on how committed you are or committable you are. And when they get dirty, just toss them in the sink, get a new one, and go to town. So for the Fra Diavolo sauce, first thing we're going to do, get the pan hot. While that pan is heating up, I'll talk to you a little bit about the tomatoes. Just get some whole peeled tomatoes. For the longest time, I thought that canned tomatoes were kind of a compromise, but what I've learned, or what I believe now, is they're not a compromise. They're just something different. I mean, some of the finest Italian chefs I know, this is their staple. It has to be a great quality tomato, and but the flavor, you don't really associate tomatoes with a lot of umami characteristics, but a great whole plum tomato really has that great umami flavor. So what we're going to do, you start with them whole. I think they take on a different flavor once they get diced and then they're canned, so go with the whole. So I say just a few here. And all we're going to do is just a quick rough dice, about a 1/2 inch, 4 times across, turn it 90 degrees, 4 times across, you're there. All right, we are going to next do the garlic. Oh, so for these tomatoes, what you want to do is take them out of the juice, save the juice, dice them up, put them back in the juice. Okay, for the garlic, just going to crush the garlic and then just give it a rough chop once across. So everyone knows how to smash garlic, right? Pretty fun, pretty easy. And what I'll do, pan's probably super hot by now. I'll smack it twice. The first one really just sort of flattens it, and then the second one crushes it. What I found is if I smash it all the way to the board the first time, 9 times out of 10 it'll squirt out, and I'll have to go pick it up off the floor. But if you do just a quick bruise first and then smash it, it stays under the knife. All right, so once they're crushed, just give it the once over, leave it whole. All right, now we're ready to cook it. I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Garlic's going to go really quick, so have the tomatoes ready. That's why we did the tomatoes first. The garlic goes in. As the garlic starts to sizzle, watch the edges of the garlic. As soon as it starts to take on just a little bit of color, that's when you want to douse it with the tomatoes. It's all right to get a small amount of browning, but you don't want a lot. It turns bitter really, really quickly. All right, we're going to let that come up to temperature and let it reduce out some of that liquid. And while it's doing that, we're going to season it with a teaspoon of chili pepper pods. That makes it the Fra Diavolo. Just a pinch of salt. And then as this cooks, we have parsley to add, but we're not going to add that until it's finished cooking. Add the parsley right before you use it, so again, it stays fresh, has a fresh herbal flavor. All right, so while that's simmering, we're going to move on to the griddle cake. All right. These are great. If you like pasta, like I do, you'll love these. It's the same satisfaction, it's the same mouthfeel, just has a few more, a little bit of a different texture, and endless possibilities as far as presentation. So, what we're going to do is in a mixing bowl, we're going to put together a very simple custard mix right in the bowl. So we're going to crack one egg, put in a cup of cream. Here's my whisk. Once the cream goes in, go and puncture the egg yolk, get that whisked up slightly first, then I'll add the herbs, then I'll add the cheese. So we have 2 tablespoons of parsley, 1 tablespoon of, 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme, black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Once that's in, I'm going to add the ½ cup of Parmesan to the bowl. And just mix that up till it's smooth. That's coming along nicely. The sauce is reducing, getting rid of some of that excess water. All right, once all those ingredients are smooth and incorporated, there's no lumps of cheese, there's no streaks of egg yolk, you have a pretty smooth custard. Then we add the pasta. This is what a ½ pound of angel hair pasta looks like. There are a lot of good brands. What we use at the club, and my preference is DiCecco. It costs a couple more pennies, but it's literally just a few more pennies. But it stands up to cooking so much better than so many of the other pastas. Now, in the interest of time, I did not choose to demo the cooking of pasta. But what I will say is with angel hair, when this comes out of the box, it is so fine that it's going to, if you turn your back on that large pot of water, it's going to overcook. So once you put the pasta, angel hair, in the water, don't do anything else. Just watch the pot. It will boil. It will boil. Just watch it. And test it. And when the pasta is such that you still feel just the slightest bit of grittiness in the center of the strand of pasta, pull it, because it's so thin, there's all that carry-over heat is going to cook that pasta through. And then shock it immediately unless you're going directly to the sauce. And then that's a whole different dialogue. All right, so I cooked this last night. Holds perfectly well, just put a little bit of olive oil, toss it, refrigerate it. It's going to be just fine. And everybody in the pool, ½ pound of pasta. Using the tongs to lift it up, fold it over. That's the one thing about long pasta, it doesn't mix up very well. All right, so that's ready. All the seasonings are in there. The custard is evenly distributed around the pasta. So I'm using what is called a quarter sheet pan, quarter bun pan, quarter size. But what you want to look for is something that's about 9 by 12 inches, like any baking dish will do the same job. Okay, I think I am going to stop right there and show you the relative amount of moisture that's left in that sauce. I don't want it too firm, too dry. So that's about the texture that we're looking for. Okay. Very quick sauce, doesn't take a lot. All right, so the pasta's ready. What we want to do is, this is parchment paper. You can also use plastic. Plastic works in the oven quite nicely, actually. Parchment is preferred. And what we're going to do here is just put a little bit of oil on it. Oh, very important, and I didn't do it. I almost forgot. You need to oil the pan and the top of the parchment paper. Reason being is if any of that custard, as it's cooking, leaches underneath this paper, then it's going to stick. All right, the pasta goes in. Just work it around the pan to get an even layer. Another thing you can do to help get that even layer, just going to put a piece of plastic on it. And take another pan and just sort of nestle it. Can't press too hard, otherwise the custard squeezes out the top. Just kind of give you a nice flat surface because we're going to punch griddle cakes out of this once it's chilled. Okay, so the plastic comes off and cover it with foil. And it goes into a 300-degree oven for about a half hour to 40 minutes max. Okay, I've lost my griddle cake. Here we go. Now, this was last night. And you can see I've been tasting and playing around with it, but it's firm now. It's just a very light coating of custard on that pasta, makes it pliable. We can punch it and work with it at that. So what we're going to do here, we're going to flip it out. And take another piece of plastic. Or parchment. Parchment would work as well. What we're going to do this time, we're going to put the plastic on top of the pasta. Bottom of the same pan, flip it over, It'll pop out onto the back of that pan. And then since you have the parchment or the plastic underneath it, then it's pretty easy just to kind of slide it right onto your cutting board. All right. Now from here, it's pretty simple. Take a round cutter. This is slightly larger than the one we used for the tomato. It can be any size that you would like. Gonna punch little griddle cakes. Then we're going to dip the top side, meaning the rough side, in more grated Parmesan, and then brown that. Okay, and I sprinkle just a little bit more on top. A little bit of olive oil in the pan. You can do more of these at one time. I just ran out of pans, so I had to use a small pan. So those are going to brown. Again, through the magic of television, this is what it's going to come out looking like. Everybody see that? So what happens is the cheese gets nice and crusty, the pasta stays nice and soft, that custard loosens up when it gets warm, so it's a little crispy crust, creamy. It's delicious, trust me on that. So that's where we're going with the griddle cake. All right, that's the griddle cake. Next up, got to get the scallops working. So this is where we're going with it. These are beautiful U10 scallops. U10 refers to the fact that it takes under 10 scallops to make a pound. When you get down to U8s, that's under 8. So U8s are about 2 ounces each, and a U10 is roughly about 1.5 ounces. So that's really good sized scallop. Beautiful, beautiful product. So what we're going to do is take this thinly sliced prosciutto ham. If you're worried about doing this, just just do it on your deli slicer that you all have at home. It'll come out really nice and thin and perfect, no problem. Or you can do what I did and buy it. This I got at Whole Foods. They actually have a couple of really, really great thinly sliced prosciutto products. I don't think that I could do it that way. So beautiful product. So what we're going to do is take a piece, and it comes with these handy membranes in between them, so they handle very, very nicely. All right, so I'm going to lay that down. I'm going to split it in half. Take the scallop, put it on its edge, and roll it in the ham. I didn't cut through that one cleanly, so it pulled on the ham just a little bit. And just take a little toothpick and secure the seam. Most of the time, you don't really even need to do that. The ham's going to stay put for the most part. I do it just for a little extra security. Do one more. Everybody see all right? Okay, loosen up the ham, scallop on, just roll it like a wagon wheel. That one a little easier. Little toothpick. And secure it. All right. Final step before we plate is we're going to caramelize them. And so, hot pan, cast iron is best. Either a thick pan, one with multiple layer bottoms, or cast iron, so it holds the heat and you'll get a nice caramelization on it. The oil and the scallops go down. You hear that? You need to be able to hear them hiss, or you're not even close to being hot enough. Just let those start to caramelize a little bit. Need about 2 minutes. Now, once you put them down, resist the urge to look a lot of times to check for the caramelization. Wait at least a minute and 45 seconds before you check it. Is anyone timing this? All right, I'm going to have to guess. So if we take inventory, when we get to the plating, we're going to put the sauce first. We'll drop the griddle cake in the middle of the sauce. The scallops will go on top of that, and we'll be golden. Once you get the caramelization on one side, again, almost exactly 2 minutes, just flip it over. For 1 minute. Everybody see those? Don't they smell great? Can you smell that? I mean, just smell that. It's awesome. So, see how quickly that caramelized. That's the attack of heat that you want. You want a nice hot attack of heat. And the 1 minute on the flip side is going to bring these scallops to medium rare. Perfect. That's what you want. Important though, you want to get them, once you get them caramelized in that extra minute on the flip side, you want to get them out of the pan. All right, there we have it. And we are ready to plate. Take our plate. As I said, we're going to start with the Fra Diavolo. It'll go down first, followed by the griddle cake. One or two scallops. Oops, don't want the toothpick. And that the prosciutto just on the edge where it was browning is really nice and crisp right now, but then the rest is nice and tender. So it's got great textures going on. So we put those two scallops there. We have a little bit of reduced balsamic. First though, we have just some simple peas, just stewed in a little bit of butter, maybe some shallots. Something about peas and scallops for me that I just really love. So there's that. We're going to do a little bit of reduced balsamic vinegar. A little bit of basil, and we're done with the second dish. Oop. That cameraman. So that's the second dish. Any questions? You still doing okay? All right. All right. Third and final is the rosemary smoked salmon. I wanted to show this technique because it's pretty simple, and you can apply it to pork chops or salmon or steak or venison or just about anything you want. And you don't need a full barbecue going, or if you're doing it inside, you do kind of need a good hood, a good fan. But you can always do this outside on the grill as well. So it works for everybody. First thing that you need to do is in the recipe packet is a recipe for a very simple brine: a gallon of water, cup of sugar, cup of salt. Super, super simple. You don't even need to heat that up to get it to dissolve because there's not that much salt or sugar in it. So I have these, this I should have showed you first before I spill it on the floor. We have these 3 salmon fillets. I'm just going to cover them in the brine. And then we're going to let that brine for, make sure it's fully covered with the brine. You want to let that brine for 4 or 5 hours. Again, the brine is not terribly strong, so you're not going to come out with a salty piece of fish at that time period. So that can go in the refrigerator and brine. Now, after 4 hours, 5 hours, the more you work with this, the more you'll develop your preference. You want to take it out, let it dry, and if you have the time to allow it to dry overnight, allow it to dry overnight. Because what that does is this dry surface that forms on meat and fish that's been brined is called a pellicle. And that pellicle is what really attracts and allows the smoke flavor to stick to the food. So a good pellicle is very beneficial. It's not vital, but it does benefit the flavor. So that's what you're ready to smoke. Now, with this smoking apparatus, when I do this, I like to get it well under the hood, and you'll see why in a minute. But take any deep pan. If you have a big cast iron pan, that's probably ideal. Anything that will fit this with a little clearance on top that you can cover it is going to work. So what I've done here is just taking this 4-inch pan, 4-inch deep, 2 pilasters or feet, if you will, of foil, super simple. We're going to drop the rosemary, get this pan hot, drop the rosemary in the center, and then once it starts to smoke, this is going to drop down on top of it. It's going to stay above the ashes and above the smoking herbs. We'll cover it, and we'll set it aside for about half an hour. So what that looks like is pan on fire. Don't go anywhere. High heat. Got about 10 sprigs of rosemary. These are large sprigs, so if I chop that up, it'd be about half a cup, 3/4 of a cup, so about that much fuel. This is very technical, so pay attention. Okay. Drop it in. Don't have to cut it, and don't have to strip the leaves or anything like that. It's going to smoke just fine on its own. So, as this is generating smoke, let me go back here. That clicking's annoying me, so I'm going to come up with a front burner. Maybe not. Okay. If you don't have a lid that fits the pan, just use foil. I happen to have this lid that fits that pan, so I'm going to use this and then just seal the edges with the foil. So you can see it's already starting to smoke. Great sign. I'm going to let that volume get a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to drop the salmon in. Once I drop the salmon in, I want to give it a little supercharge of smoke, so I'm going to let it continue to burn for about another 30 seconds or so, once it's covered. All right, I think that's close enough. Salmon goes in, cover goes on. We let it continue to generate a little bit of heat, a little bit more smoke. You see that coming up? You see the smoke? Okay. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is seal this. Just got a couple strips of foil. Hot. Going to put it on loosely at first so I don't burn my fingers. And go over with a towel. Pinch it shut. All right. So now that salmon, it's cooking slightly, but it won't be fully cooked in the smoke. We'll finish that in a 400-degree oven as soon as that comes out of the smoke. So you want that to go for about a half an hour. Next thing we're going to look at are these really fun cabbage chartreuse. Okay, we're going to blanch the leaves, so I'm going to make sure that water is coming up to temperature. All right, that's a Savoy cabbage. Some of you may be very familiar with it. To me, it's my favorite cabbage. As cabbages go, it's pretty light and relatively delicate. You can tell it's a Savoy, because of its honeycomb texture. And so first thing we're going to do is, to make these, we need the outer leaves. I'll show you how I take those off. And once we get into the core, we're going to shred that, saute that up with some aromatics. That'll be our stuff. So to get going with this, just going to peel off or cut off the core, and then peel the leaves off in the reverse order in which they grew. So the outer leaves come off first. When I'm working with something as dense as a cabbage like this and trying to wield a knife, I learned this the hard way growing up, or coming up in the business, I should say. What I'll do is I'll just anchor the knife against my hip and I'll move the cabbage. So I'm not going to be cut as bad with the cabbage as I am with a knife. So that's the technique I use. So, and then I just want to separate the leaves at the stem, digging into the core. Off they come. I gotta do it a little gingerly so that you don't rip the leaves. You would like as solid a leaf as possible. Peel off the marred or damaged leaves. Don't use those. I'm peeling off the second one. Pops right out. And so on and so forth as you get down to the core. This will come back and we'll shred, but first, just to demonstrate the blanching method. When you're cooking pasta and when you're blanching vegetables, use as much water as you reasonably can. The reason we're doing this, I'm just doing 2 leaves now, but if I were doing 8 or 10 leaves, I want the more volume of water I have, the more it holds its temperature. So we take the leaves right into the boiling water. Gave the dishwasher the night off too. Push these down. If I have a lot of leaves and it kills the water temperature a little bit more, I'll cover it until it comes back up, then I'll take it off. So those will blanch. You really should cook these for, or you should blanch them really for about 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. Just get the leaf nice and tender, but not overcooked. Some ice for my ice water. We're going to pretend that's 3 minutes. Come out, go right into the ice water. I believe they say plunge it into the ice water. It makes it colder that way. All right, so that's a basic blanching technique for most every green vegetable. And so then you'll take those out of the water, lay out some paper towels, spread them out, blot them dry with paper towels, and then this is what they look like when you're ready to use them. All right, so the cabbage, cut it in half, take the core out. Where's cut it in quarters, and then just very fine shred. Now, you need 2 cups for this recipe. I'm going to stop there. And once I shred it, I'm just going to just run a knife over it once or twice so that the shreds are shorter, because we're going into something, we're going to roll it into something about the size of a golf ball. And the longer it is, the more unwieldy it gets. So just shorten it just a little bit. 2 cups, which I happen to have right here. And we're going to start that process. All right. We're going to saute the filling now. We're going to start with a couple ounces of bacon. How can you go wrong? Any bacon, Jim? It's not on the recipe, but what I do a lot is I'll just take a little bit of oil when I'm rendering bacon, and I'll just moisten it just a little bit to get it started. Because typically there's a lot or there is sugar in the brine that they cure the bacon with, and that you don't want the sugar to burn before you start rendering fat. So that fat just helps, that olive oil helps it get a little head start. So this is going to saute. Again, I'm going to accelerate things in the interest of time, but we want the bacon to actually get a little bit brown, not super crispy, but brown so that you get the flavor out of the caramelization. So that's first, the shallots. Our second, that's a half cup of shallots. Oh, again, can you smell those shallots? Here. Can you smell them now? Nice. You can use onions, you can use leeks. Now, we want the shallots to, we want them to sweat. We don't want them to take on a lot of color. We just want them to kind of clarify where you look at the shallot and it looks kind of clear all the way through. That's when it's done. And then after that, then the cabbage goes in. You're going to saute the cabbage, let it get coated with that hot fat. Let that fat coat it all around. Normally it'll cook about another minute, at which point you'll take the half a cup of stock, put the stock on, you cover it for about a minute and a half or so. What that's going to do is start in earnest the wilting process of the filling. All right, and so basically, that's it. You just want to adjust the seasoning. Little salt. Little pepper. It'll sweat. Now, after about a minute of it sweating and wilting, take the lid off. And then you want to let that excess liquid just evaporate. Okay. Then when it's all done, again, through the magic of television, you should have something that looks kind of like that. You can see that in this version, the bacon is browner, has a lot more flavor imparted to it because we gave it the opportunity to caramelize and get all of that cabbage really savory and tasty. So that's what it should look like. Now the fun part. Remember these guys? All right, so what we're going to do, a little bit of surgery first on each leaf. Put the leaf inside surface down. So it grows on the cabbage like this. So this is the outside surface, and that's where the spine is thicker. So put that down. We're just going to shave off the thick half of that spine, that stem. Just nice. It's better. Okay, so I thinned it down, but now I'm taking the back of the knife and just tenderizing up and down that rib, up and down that spine. Just breaking up the fibers. A little bit on the other side. So what you get is a super pliable leaf, even where that thick stem otherwise would have broken as we tried to roll this. All right, so now we're ready. And you want to place, well, depending on how large you want them, 1.5 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons, something like that. These are probably 1.5. So the objective here is to get this into a ball. So what I like to use is typically I use like a linen napkin. Unfortunately, my wife put the kibosh on that since I'm home and I have to use our napkins. So I'm not going to be using a napkin. What I am going to be using is cheesecloth. And whenever you use cheesecloth, whether it's for rolling or most other purposes, get it wet and wring it out. It's a lot easier to handle, and it gets rid of some of those that fibrous dust that sometimes is packaged with the cheesecloth. So I'm going to take this and fold it roughly into the shape of a napkin. Come on. I think I'll make this 3-ply. So I have a little bit more strength. So here's how this all comes together. Now, turn the stem end towards you. It's a little big. I'm just going to trim off about 1 inch. Not too much, just about like that. All right. Filling in the middle. You want to roll it like a burrito. Not too tight. Keep it a little loose for now. And now you have 2 open ends. Very simply fold those under. Okay. Now that looks nice. It's a nice packet. Looks like a cabbage roll with stuffed cabbage and be perfectly delicious, beautiful presentation. But we're just going to take a quick step further and drop it in the center, not the open end, but the closed top of the cabbage down onto the napkin. Bring it up, pinch it off, and then we're going to twist it, and it's going to help enhance that spherical shape. And I always do this over a pan because sometimes, whether it's water in the cheesecloth or being squeezed out of the blanched leaf, it's going to drip on you. All right. And so we have that nice, really very presentable chartreuse of cabbage, little cabbage ball. About the size of a golf ball. And so we have all of these I did earlier, and we're going to brush these with a little bit of butter, put them in the oven to reheat, to rethermalize, and get ready for plating. All right, home stretch. Now, if you had a chance to look at that recipe for the apple braised lentil stew, it's pretty straightforward. I was going to demo it, but again, in the interest of time, I think I'll skip the actual demonstration of that. I do have some, coincidentally, already prepared. So what this is a half pound of French lentils, green lentils. They're also known as le puy. They are different. If you've never had these particular lentils and you're not a lentil fan, try these, because these are as unlentil-like, I think, as you can get. They don't break down. They don't turn to mush. They don't get too soft. These cooked for probably anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and they're still nice and firm. They have really great integrity and very, very good flavor. So what we do is just saute these with some aromatics, put in carrots, onions, leeks, celery, everything that's listed on the recipe. Then we cover them with, I believe it's a cup of applesauce, and then 2 cups of stock, and then cover them and let them simmer until they're tender. And that apple juice reduces, it infuses the lentils. You get a really nice, sweet, fruity fragrance and undertone of flavors. It's going to go really good with the smoked salmon, especially so you have the rosemary perfume, you have the apple flavor, a little bit of sweetness, the smoke on the fish. It's really a great combination of flavors. All right, we're going to unveil the salmon. So at this point, you can see how, excuse me 1 second, technical difficulty here. You can see how it looks a little bit cooked, and indeed it is. If I pinch it, you'll see how it flakes. Can you see that flaking? So it is partially cooked, but again, we're gonna brush it with some shallot butter as per the recipe, and we're gonna finish it in a 425 degree oven. That's gonna give it only for like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It's gonna give it one last attack of heat, cook it through, and it should be super tender and full of flavor. The way to do that is simply take the whole rack, onto the pan, brush it with butter. $400, $450, $420, $400, $425, just around that. Here's how I would gauge it. That got a little bit more cooked than it normally would. I cut down the size of the fillets because of the size of the china that we were presenting on, so it cooked through a little bit more. If the salmon comes out and you feel it's, hey, this is almost done, use a hotter oven so that you can impart a quicker attack of heat. You get a little bit more color on top. If it has some cooking, a good amount of cooking to go, lower the temperature to 400 and go from there. So I think we have all the components. So we're going to plate. Start with the plate. And go. Now, first thing down is the lentils, but we have to finish the lentils. After the lentils are fully cooked and just before service, what we need to do is three things. After they're cooked, we're going to take this bouquet garni, as they are called. It's just a little bouquet of thyme and rosemary with a handy string attached. And you drop it into the lentils and you sink it into the lentils. And if you're doing a big batch, that's why we have the long tail. Just wrap it around the handle so you know where to find it when you need to. So after 30 minutes, the lentils aren't cooking anymore. Just the heat of the lentils is just steeping the herbs. And so after about 30 minutes, just pull it out, discard it. And so it just takes on the flavor without the actual matter of the herbs. And two more things to add. We're adding a 1/4 cup of sour cream. And I got to drain these diced apples, and we'll add those as well. And about a 1/2 cup of diced apples. We're just going to fold that sour cream in. It's going to lighten the lentils. The apples, of course, are going to enhance the apple perfume that they already possess. And they're raw. The heat it's plenty of heat to cook those apples through. And truth be known, if you serve it immediately, you're still going to have a little crispness in the apple, which is actually quite nice. So that sour cream lightened them up. It gave them just the slightest bit of creamy texture. And the texture is going to play very, very well against that salmon and the cabbage. So, first thing down are the lentils. Next, we do the salmon. Have I told you how much I love these? You should check them out. They're really great. All right, let's take this guy. Okay, salmon goes on top of that. We have the chartreuse as well. And now for garnish, I have a horseradish cream. You usually associate this with prime rib, etc. But if you cut back on the horseradish a little bit, maybe a little bit more lemon, it goes really great with this smoked salmon here. So we're just going to put a little dollop between the cabbage and the fish so that you can get at it when you need it. I'm not going to put it all over the fish. Just a little caper berry. And then these are great. I don't know if many of you are familiar. These little sweetie drop, they're Peruvian drop peppers. And they look like a perfect teardrop. Can you see that? They're just gorgeous and delicious as well. And these are slightly sweet, a little bit tart, and again, with the smoky salmon, the apples, they're just the perfect match. So just gonna put a few of those. So everybody can get to them. Little marinated celery, just dipped in a little bit of vinaigrette. And that's the third dish.